This is a throwaway account. Sorry for the long post. I, 22-year-old male, broke up with my girlfriend, 21-year-old female, a year ago. We were apart for 9 months, have been back together for 3. She's always claimed to not be a very sexually minded girl and says that intimacy makes her feel uncomfortable. She was wrapped before she ever met me and said that intimacy has always made her feel uneasy, even before that. I, on the other hand, am relatively comfortable with intimacy. I don't think people should give their bodies away to just anyone, but I've had my fair amount of intimacy partners and don't look at almost any of them as regrettable experiences. Well, after getting back together, she told me that she had slept with one guy while we were apart. About a week later, I caught her in a lie, and she said that she meant to say that she only had intimacy with one new guy, and that she had slept with people that she already had from before we ever met. She promised me it was a misunderstanding. Now, nobody likes being lied to, but I especially don't because of trauma and deception from my childhood. Yet despite my intuition telling me otherwise, I chose to forgive and forget. I didn't want to let my trust issues ruin our chances of being together again. Fast forward a month. She tells me that she needs to tell me something that's probably going to lead to us breaking up. My heart sinks. She tells me she slept with one guy from her past and 5 new dudes. Now, I'm pretty open, like I said, but that felt kind of extreme. Much worse than the number, however, was the fact that she had lied to me about it. She said she lied because it was too painful to talk about. I took a few days to process everything, and we talked again. She said that a month after we broke up, that she flew to see her past lover and stayed with him for a few days, sleeping with him on and off. Then, shortly after that, she got very drunk and had intimacy with a coworker. An encounter she says she was too drunk to remember. Then after that, she was wrapped by a guy while passed out drunk. This she had already confided in me about beforehand. We had hooked up one day, about 2 months before we had gotten back together, and she told me about that, but nothing else. She now said that was the catalyst. She said she felt helpless. After that, she said she would go out and get wasted and text guys from her job or the club to come pick her up. When we first talked about it the day she admitted to lying, she said she was having intimacy with these men to gain control over her body after what happened to her, which kind of made sense to me, although it made me sad. When we talked again, and in much more detail, she said that each of those men that would take her home while she was trashed had wrapped her. Every guy besides the initial 2. That she would agree to go home with them, but would say no to intimacy, and they would do it anyways. She said all 5 were non-consensual. She said after the guy that wrapped her while she was asleep, she got wrapped 2 more times, had drunk intimacy again with the coworker mentioned earlier, then hooked up with me like I mentioned earlier, and then got wrapped twice more in the 2 months before we got back together. After she told me all this, I was very skeptical, but tried to be as supportive as I could. I understand no matter what that she must not have been in a good place mentally, and it makes me feel her hurt. I do want to make sure she's being entirely honest with me this time around. What is the likelihood of a girl getting wrapped 5 times in 1 year? Should I be concerned getting back into a relationship with her when she has so much going on in her head that affected her judgment and the way she treated herself? She says she hates herself for it all, and I tell her that I love her and that she should forgive herself, but it all secretly scares me, and I'm afraid she'll lie to me again. She stopped drinking after an incident once we got back together, so I'm hoping that'll help keep her self-destructive behaviors at bay. It makes me sad and concerned that she couldn't care for herself more while we were apart. I did a lot of things to improve myself, like pick up boxing and go skydiving, in the time while we were broken up. I had 3 intimacy partners and 1 girl who I was seeing continually that really helped me learn to love myself more than I had. I grew in the time during our breakup. It pains me deeply that my girlfriend felt hopeless, worthless, and used instead. Any advice is appreciated. My head is obviously very occupied with all of this, as you can see by this essay I've just written. I have never heard of a girl being wrapped 5 times in such little time. But I want to understand so that I can trust my girlfriend once more and help her to move past it all at it. She went to the police about the first wrap, the one where she was sleeping and he walked in on her. I had known about this incident before I had gotten back with her. I also know she is not a villain, like some of you say. Now, she very well may be and probably is a very traumatized and hurting girl who is subconsciously or consciously manipulating me for reasons she is justifying in her head. I'm also aware that the other intimacy encounters aren't likely to actually be rap, but rather self-destructive behavior because of the trauma that she isn't proud of. Being untruthful to me about that obviously isn't fair to me, and I plan to act accordingly. But she's not some evil being. Even if I have to leave her, my heart will hurt for her. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This girl was not rapped on 5 separate occasions by 5 different men in the span of 9 months. If you believe her about literally anything, you are one gullible SOB. Honestly, I don't think she was rapped before she met you. She seems to call lots of intimacy encounters a rape in an effort to make herself seem like a victim, garner pity, make you think she is some innocent virgin or something, reduce her number of partners, or as an excuse for her bad behavior or choices. Run far, far away, dude. Comment 2. You're 22. How much time do you want to spend with her while she tries to figure herself out? Whether she is a pathological liar, someone who has been severely traumatized by intimacy attack, an alcoholic, or some combination of these doesn't matter. No matter how you do the math, the answer is to break up. Even if she has suffered significant trauma, she needs to sort herself out and deal with the alcohol problem and the lying before she can be in a relationship. And you can't fix this. Now, for the update. Thanks for the comments on my last post. So, things have escalated since then. My girlfriend, she's been acting strange, more distant than usual. I thought maybe it was just the stress of everything. But then I found out she's been talking to her ex again, the one she flew out to see. I stumbled upon messages on her phone, and it wasn't just friendly talk. They were planning to meet up again. When I confronted her, she broke down, said she was confused and scared and that he was the only one who understood what she was going through. I felt betrayed, but I also felt sorry for her. It's like she's trapped in this cycle she can't escape. I tried to be there for her, but then I got a call from a friend who said he saw her out at a bar with some guy from her work, the same coworker she mentioned before. I didn't want to believe it, but when I asked her, she couldn't look me in the eye. She admitted she went out for drinks, but swore nothing happened. I wanted to trust her, but how could I? Amidst all this, her ex starts harassing me online, sending me messages about how they're meant to be together and that I should back off. It's like he enjoys the chaos he's causing. I blocked him, but it didn't stop there. He showed up at my work, trying to provoke me into a fight. I kept my cool, but it was hard. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. Then, one night, she didn't come home. I was worried sick, calling hospitals, friends, anyone who might know where she was. She finally showed up the next morning, a mess, saying she'd been with her ex and that they'd had a huge fight. She said she was done with him for good, that she realized how toxic he was. I wanted to believe her, but the trust was gone. I thought that was the worst of it, but then she dropped another news. She was pregnant. We hadn't been careful a few times, and now, here we were. She was scared, and so was I. We talked about our options, and she decided she wanted to keep the baby. I agreed to support her decision, even though I was still reeling from everything else. Life became, interesting, of doctor's appointments and trying to prepare for a baby neither of us were ready for. But then, during a routine checkup, the doctor said there were complications. The baby wasn't developing as it should be. We were faced with the possibility of losing the child. It was a tough time, but it brought us closer together. We started to heal, to forgive. But just when I thought we were turning a corner, she miscarried. It was devastating. She withdrew into herself, and I didn't know how to help her. I felt like I was losing her all over again. In the aftermath, she became more determined to change. She started therapy, stopped drinking entirely, and even went back to school. She was trying to build a new life for herself. I admired her strength, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, out of the blue, she told me she was leaving. She needed to start fresh somewhere else, without me. She said it wasn't fair to drag me into her mess any longer. I was heartbroken, but I understood. I let her go. hoping she'd find the peace she was looking for. Looking back, I realized I was holding on to the idea of us more than the reality. I wanted to save her, to fix things. But some things are beyond repair. I'm learning to accept that now. Thanks for reading. My husband gambles away our savings and falsely accuses me of cheating. So I press charges for fraud and watch him get handcuffed and dragged away by the police. Edit. I forgot to add a little context to the jobless thing. He has been looking for a job for around 2-ish months now and was looking before he got fired. He knew he was getting fired, just not when. They ended up firing him right after his birthday. I was also helping him and even reposted one of his resumes after his post got removed. I read the suggestions and he had me respond if he had more questions. He's waiting back on 3 job offers at the moment. The issue is just that I've been the only one making money for about a month, and it's quite stressful. My husband and I got into an argument last night because we haven't been intimate in almost a month. This is because a couple of months ago, he was in a self-admitted manic state and took out multiple loans to gamble and lost all the money. We're talking upwards of $65,000 in loans from multiple banks. He also lost his job a month ago. We're in a terrible financial situation, so I've been working at my job harder than ever to make more money and help him pay off his debt. I work extra days and stay at work for up to 12 hours a day. I even volunteer to work at other locations for extra opportunities to make more money. Some of these are over an hour away. Last night, I came home from work after working 10 hours, and I was physically exhausted and emotionally spent because we almost had an active shooter situation at my workplace, and it stressed me out. He tried to initiate intimacy, and I was not in the mood because I had been home for less than 10 minutes, and he currently doesn't have a job, so he was able to relax all day waiting for me. Edit. Some commenters are under the impression that I had hidden the lingerie when I bought them, and that he'd found them and confronted me. We have a large walk-in closet and a rack dedicated to my lingerie. They're in plain view, and he has access to them all the time for when he wants me to wear them. He knows about all of them because he helps me pick them out. The particular pair he was mad about was a purple Valentine's Day, set from VS, which I bought via their online VS sale. I didn't wear them on Valentine's Day. I got my period 5 days early, so I put them with the rest of my stuff and never ended up wearing them at all since. VD was a month ago. He stood up and took my lingerie from one of my clothing racks and threw them at my head, screaming, "Who are you wearing this for? Because it's not for me." I couldn't even fathom entertaining that thought. So I tried to cool it down, but he kept going. Eventually, I just left the house and took a drive for 2 hours. By the time I came home, he had fallen asleep. This morning, I went to work and noticed on our cameras that he had gone to sleep in the basement in the middle of the night and never came up. By 3 p.m., I was extremely worried that something was wrong, and he suffers from suicidal ideation. So I told my boss that I was leaving work early to check on him. When I came home, he was sleeping in the basement. So I woke him up, and he asked me to bring him ibuprofen for a headache and to go pick up breakfast for him. So I drove out to get him a Red Bull, breakfast sandwich, and a milkshake, came home, and gave it to him. That's when he reinitiated the fight from last night and demanded to know where the lingerie was. The night before, when I got home from my drive, I was afraid that he was going to destroy the lingerie, which I had spent my own money on, so I hid it in a safe place. I wouldn't tell him where the lingerie was, and he started screaming at me again. I decided to leave the house again and told him that his comments made me sick. Not 5 minutes later, this was the text that I received. "Next time you want to start a conversation with me, you can honestly just apologize and suck my weenie, or you can just honestly stay far away from me." Good. I'm glad you feel that way, because you bore me. I don't even know what to say. I'm heartbroken, and all I want to do is cry in the parking lot that I'm currently sitting in. I feel completely unappreciated for working extra shifts to help him pay off his debts, taking care of him even after he accuses me of cheating on him, and checking on him when I think something is wrong. Honestly, that one message left me completely speechless. I don't recognize this person. I have no idea who he is. I feel degraded and humiliated with the way that he spoke to me. How do I respond to his accusations? And what am I supposed to do about the way he spoke to me in those text messages? I know he's going through a lot, but the way he's been talking to me has put my self-esteem straight through the ground. How do I navigate this? And how do I try to move on from what happened over the past 24 hours? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I looked through your history, and I really think you need to go back to therapy for yourself. You come from an hurtful home, and your husband is emotionally hurtful. I'm guessing he's also been or will be physically hurtful. I'm sure he's a great guy when he's happy. I'm sure it's difficult, and you love him, and you've had great memories. But as a whole, he's a terrible husband. I'm sure you worry that he'll hurt himself if you leave, but you need to worry about how he'll continue to hurt you if you stay. You matter. You're important. Comment 2. Get a freaking divorce! You understand he needs you, not the other way around, and yet you stay there and keep talking about the nonsense abuse? Why? Please wake up. You don't have to stay. You don't have to work it out. You need to leave. Why doesn't he have a job? He has debt but no job. Can he Uber? Can he do something? Yeah, you need to let this relationship go. He's hurtful and cruel and will never respect you because you don't respect yourself. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, after that horrible text, things just spiraled. I was sitting in that parking lot trying to wrap my head around everything when my phone buzzed with a call from the bank. Turns out my husband had taken out another loan, this time using my name. He forged my signature. I was beyond furious. I mean, how could he sink any lower? I drove straight to the bank, and after a long conversation with the manager, it was clear I had to press charges against him for fraud. It was the last thing I wanted, but I had no choice. I got home, and there he was, sitting on the couch like nothing happened. I confronted him about the loan, and he just shrugged, said he needed the money to fix his mistakes. I told him about the charges, and he laughed it off, said I wouldn't dare, but I did. I called the police, and they came and took him away. Watching him being let out in handcuffs, I felt a mix of relief and deep sadness. The next few days were a blur. I was trying to work, deal with lawyers, and the fallout from his arrest. My family and friends were supportive, but I felt so alone. Then, one of the job offers he was waiting on called. They were willing to give him a chance, despite everything. But he was in jail, and I had to be the one to tell them he couldn't take it. It was like watching a lifeline slip through our fingers. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I got home one day to find the house had been broken into. They took everything of value, including some of the electronics I needed for work. The police said it was probably someone who knew us, knew our situation. I couldn't help but wonder if it was connected to his gambling debts. I was at rock bottom. I had to take a leave from work because I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. I was a mess. But then, something inside me snapped. I was done being the victim. I started to fight back, got a lawyer to handle the divorce, and another to deal with the fraud. I was going to protect myself, no matter what. The divorce was messy. He tried to blame me for everything, said I drove him to it, but I stood my ground. The judge saw right through his lies. In the end, I got the house, and he got a mountain of debt and a criminal record. It wasn't a victory, not really. There was no joy in it, just a deep sense of loss. But life has a way of surprising you. One of my coworkers, who had been a rock through all this, confessed he had feelings for me. I was shocked. I wasn't ready for a new relationship, but his support meant the world to me. We're taking it slow, just as friends for now. It's nice to have someone to talk to, someone who understands. So here I am, picking up the pieces of my life. It's not easy, and some days are harder than others. But I'm getting there, one step at a time. I've learned the hard way that you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed, and you can't sacrifice your own happiness for someone else's mistakes. Thanks for reading. My wife laughs at my needs. After 15 years of marriage. So I book couples therapy and watch her squirm as we air our dirty laundry. My wife and I have been married since 2018, but we've been together since 2008. She is my high school sweetheart. We both grew up in pretty conservative Christian houses, hello religious deprogramming, and while we were dating, we both agreed to wait until marriage before we had intimacy. And we actually did. We would mess around a little bit, but we waited for marriage to go all the way. We used to talk about how great it's going to be to have intimacy for the first time, and how we'll just do it all the time, because we'll be married, and that's what married people do. After we got married, we had a great wedding night and a great honeymoon, but pretty soon afterward, we ran into issues with a vastly different appetite for intimacy. I would feel great with a 1-2 times a week rhythm, but she seems to be a once a month or less kind of person. I respect her boundaries. I still pursue her because she says she likes being pursued. But we have virtually zero intimate touch, beyond a hug and a peck on the cheek, unless she determines she wants anything else. Over the last few years, this difference in appetite has caused some issues, mostly stemming from me asking her to sit down and talk about this difference, explain how I feel, and try to work through solutions together so we can both feel fulfilled in this marriage. I proposed counseling, therapy, researched alternatives to intimacy, but she is resistant, if not completely unwilling, to do anything to try to work with me through this. Open marriage is a hard-line boundary for both of us. The last time I tried broaching the topic of our intimacy life, the conversation lasted 2 days and ended with her saying she never wanted to talk about this again. And me, in frustrated tears, trying to explain that it feels unfair that she has decided that she gets everything she needs. I do not. That's just the way it is, and there's no room to talk about it. A few days later, she said the only part of the conversation she really remembers was that seeing me cry was upsetting. Not upsetting because you're hurt, but upsetting because seeing you cry was uncomfortable and unattractive. That was probably 6-8 months ago. Since then, we've made up. Now, through this entire time, stretching all the way back to like age 13 or so, like every normal, healthy human man I've ever heard of, I've been partaking in occasional self-care. I know there were people who have addiction issues with adult content, but for me, it doesn't replace intimacy. It doesn't replace intimacy. And it doesn't decrease my desire for my wife at all. I use adult content and self-care as a means to control my attitude and drive, especially during the long breaks between intimacy encounters with my wife. It's an outlet for tension, and in no way has it ever had a negative effect on our relationship until today. This morning, she found evidence of self-care. She told me that if I've been watching adult content, she was going to freak out. She didn't talk to me all day. And when I told her, I love you, as she was walking upstairs, she spun around and stared daggers at me and just said, okay, and kept going. She's been texting me from bed, and I told her that yes, I have been using the internet and taking care of things myself for a long time. She spent the day in meltdown, refused to speak to me most of the day. Now she's telling me that I've ruined things. She's already canceled plans for this weekend, which we both took off work on Monday for our daughter's birthday. I'm not a fiend or an addict, and I have absolutely zero desire to explore outside of the marriage. This is an occasional release of pent-up energy that has no other viable outlet. She's so upset and hurt. I hate that she feels like this. I hate knowing that this is what caused this hurt. But also, I can't help but feel like this is a massive overreaction. And frankly, it's a little naive to just find out in your mid-30s that adult men use intimacy videos sometimes. I also feel more than a little upset at the apparent expectation that I can't have any level of intimate physical contact with my wife for weeks, months at a time. But also, if I try to handle things myself, that's cheating. That feels unfair to me. I think my next step is to push the idea of couples counseling or seeing an intimacy therapist or something. On one hand, I refuse to destroy my family over this, and I will fight tooth and nail for my marriage because we're great together outside of this one aspect. But also, I didn't agree to a virtually sexless marriage. I'm trying to work within her boundaries. How do I get her to understand that I'm trying to respect the boundaries that she's set, but I feel that some of those boundaries are unreasonable? How do I explain that self-care isn't the same as cheating, and that it's realistically the only avenue of release I have left? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your wife and you are not sexually compatible at all. And perhaps not compatible. People grow apart, it happens. You've obviously been together for a while and have formed a significant level of codependency, which is a tough thing to just give up on. However, if she is unwilling to have intimacy, unwilling to allow you to self-intimacy, unwilling to discuss this with you like an adult or engage in therapy, if you don't want an open marriage, I don't see a path forward here. I think the big tell is the conservative Christian deprogramming comment. You appear to be. She doesn't. I feel bad for the women who grew up in that shoot. But she quite obviously is not currently capable of having a healthy intimacy life. Comment 2. This is why you do not wait to have intimacy until marriage. Intimacy compatibility is really important in a relationship. How can you know how compatible you are sexually going in blind? This will never get better, please. Just get a divorce. And next time, please communicate and have intimacy with your partner before marrying them. This isn't the 1950s anymore. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for more of what's been going on. So last week was pretty up and down, to say the least. Remember how my wife found out about my self-care routine? Well, things escalated quickly. She was so mad she started throwing out words like betrayal and trust issues. It was like a bomb went off in our marriage. Now I've always known her to be the kind of person who holds on to things. Back when we were dating, she once got upset over a comment I made about her friend's dress, and she didn't let it go for weeks. But this was next level. She was talking about staying with her sister for a while, and that scared me. I mean, we've had our ups and downs, but this felt like we were teetering on the edge of something really bad. I tried to talk to her, but she was having none of it. She said she needed space to think. So I gave her space. I slept on the couch and kept things as normal as possible for our daughter. But inside I was freaking out. I kept thinking about how we promised to stick together through thick and thin when we got married. And here we were, not even able to talk about what was bothering us. Then, 2 days ago, something happened that I didn't expect. Our daughter, bless her heart, came to us with a drawing she made of the three of us holding hands. She said, "I want us to be happy like this again." It was like a wake-up call for both of us. We looked at each other, and for the first time in days, we didn't see anger. We saw pain, confusion, and a little bit of hope. That night, after our daughter went to bed, my wife finally spoke to me. She said she was sorry for overreacting, but that she felt really hurt and didn't know how to deal with it. I told her I understood, and I was sorry too. I explained that my self-care wasn't about her not being enough. It was about me trying to manage my own needs without pressuring her. We talked for hours, going back and forth about our feelings and fears. It was tough, but it felt like we were finally getting somewhere. I suggested couples counseling again, and to my surprise, she agreed. She said she wanted to understand my perspective better and find a way for us to move forward together. So, we found a counselor who specializes in intimacy issues and had our first session yesterday. It was awkward at first, but then we started to open up. The counselor helped us see that we both had valid points and that we needed to work on communication and compromise. By the end of the session, we had a plan. We're going to have weekly date nights, even if it's just watching a movie at home. We're going to keep going to counseling, and we're going to try to be more open about our needs and feelings. It's not going to be easy, but I feel like we've made a huge step in the right direction. Our daughter's birthday is coming up, and we're both committed to making it special for her. And for us, it's a chance to start fresh, to rebuild what we've always had, a strong, loving family. Thanks for reading. It's been a tough week, but I'm hopeful for the future. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.